Hello, everyone. Welcome to this panel that is entitled Grolar Bears in Responsible Management Education, Futurism, Hybridization, and Sustainability in a Post-COVID-19 World. This panel is co-organized by Lisa Fröhlich and Marina Schmitz from CBS International Business School in Germany, as well as myself, Nohal Basyouni from German University in Cairo, Egypt. Now, the aim of this panel is to raise debatable questions about the future of responsible management education. We use the analogy of a Grolar bear that is essentially a hybrid between a grizzly and a polar bear to represent unusual hybridization that could occur as a result of the unanticipated consequences of future global trends, including climate change. We expect that this hybridization can take the form of novel teaching methodologies or pedagogies in responsible management education that could match these future occurrences, and also as innovative concepts in the responsible management education literature that are advocated by researchers as a result of foreseeing certain future trends affecting management. And what we will do in this panel is that I will be presenting some of these mega trends that we expect to see in the future. And my colleagues, Lisa and Marina, will then give some insights and examples about interesting pedagogies and new innovative concepts and tools in responsible management education. So in essence, the panel links the three important notions of futurism, hybridization, and sustainability as related to these surfacing of these Grolar bears in responsible management education. Now, in the panel, we asked two questions, which are basically the two parts of this presentation, which is what are some future megatrends potentially affecting management scholarship in the future, and how can these future megatrends result in Grolar bears or these innovative hybrid concepts within responsible management education. I will start by giving an introduction about the main references used in these global projections, as well as some of these expected global projections in 2050 in specific, which is what most of the literature focuses on. And then I'll be talking about 20 plus megatrends shaping management future, ending with final rhetorical questions and handing over to Marina and Lisa. Now, this is an image that gives us sort of an insight into what kind of world we can see in the future. Will there be two worlds, like a division between a high-tech, advanced, clean and sustainable maybe world and a less fortunate side of the story? And this is a question we need to ask ourselves. Will this global divide persist? And I thought we should start with this to give, as we talk about sustainability, to give a fair kind of an equal chance to everyone, hopefully that they can participate in this discussion about clean energy, sustainability, being green, being also maybe high tech. What is the relationship between digital transformation that is affecting management and sustainability? Are they necessarily linked? Will they lead to good results in both, for example, developing countries and developed countries? We don't know, and this is what we hope not to see in the future. Also, one of the trends affecting management education, of course, responsible management has to respond to this as well, is, of course, artificial intelligence and digitalization. Now, we have seen chatbots. This is just a diagram that provokes this discussion. It is definitely one of the trends we'll discuss in a few minutes. Now, the references I use are The World in 2050, Four Forces Shaping Civilization's Northern Future, Lawrence Smith, and the four forces identified are demographic trends, natural resource demand, climate change, and globalization. There's also a reference to an Arabic book called The World in 2050 by an Egyptian economist and philosopher and historian called Galal Amin, and also some videos such as Shell Energy Scenarios 2050, a guest lecture attended by Kantar Millward Brown, another book also called The Future of Almost Everything by Patrick Dixon, where each letter of the word future translates into one of these expectations about the future, which is fast, urban, tribal, universal, radical, and ethical. This is the image of the Grolar bear, and a recent kind of editorial grabbed my attention, which is grizzly or Grolar bear hybrids are spreading across the Arctic thanks to climate change. This phenomenon is actually a result of climate change because as the world warms and the Arctic sea ice thins, these starving polar bears are being driven south where they meet the grizzlies, whose ranges are also expanding north. And therefore, we find this hybridization occurring. And this kind of led to our idea about this panel. What kind of hybridization do we expect to see in the future? And how does this relate to sustainability and the future of responsible management education? Some of the background information I want to give the audience in this case is that according to the World Economic Forum, there are going to be changes about the most powerful economies. For example, it is foreseen that China and then India are going to be the top or the most powerful economies in 2050. Also, according to Business Insider, there are negative and positive projections overall about the world in the future. Some of the negative are that the number of people living in cities will triple, pollution, lung, and respiratory diseases are going to increase. More than half the world population may not have access to fresh water, and especially in Africa and South Asia, there will be a problem with food. Cyber attacks are expected to increase and other trends. For time reasons, I will not go through each of them, but I'm happy to share also the slides after the panel. Also, the positive expectations include child mortality rates will be vastly lower, and we'll have vaccines and cures for many diseases. Can challenge that, of course, given the COVID-19 pandemic that has sort of paralyzed the world for months and months. But this is the projection according to Business Insider. Also, extreme poverty will decrease and artificial intelligence will be insanely good, among other expectations. Now, on a more philosophical level, we asked ourselves, what kind of world do we expect to see? What values will shape the future of youth then? And we identified 20 plus global mega trends. And just as a disclaimer, we highlight that these trends exhibit two characteristics. They portray path dependency, where we can extrapolate from the past to the future, and they are also of complementary nature. This means they are not necessarily mutually exclusive. They're kind of related. So the first of these trends is the concept of trade-offs, where we say that when there is more freedom in one direction, there's less freedom in others. We can relate to the concept of materialism and spirituality. So with more materialism in the world, do we expect to see less spirituality? And also with more choices available for us as consumers, are we really better off? And are we free to choose, especially with social media and the hyper-digital world that we're living in? So management and marketing scholarship need to address, as we expect, consumer affairs, such as consumer well-being, among other transformative consumer research issues. And we'll see more of that in the future. And this is affecting responsible management, of course. Now, this is just an example of this hyper-digital world. Every minute, how many tweets do we have? More than 400,000. This is actually in 2018. There's probably, it's a higher rate by now, but this is information we could find. Also LinkedIn, Netflix, Uber, YouTube videos, I don't know, in Amazon sales, spam emails, Skype calls, and whatnot. So in this era of abundance, are we really free as consumers? Now, a related trend is also an increase in consumerism, and the projections say that 1% of humanity will own 65% of wealth by 2050. And so the question we ask is, how can we escape the siege of this consumerist society and the ads of the mega corporation and the continuous creation of desires? Are we witnessing the age of oppression for the consumer rather than for the worker, as in the bureaucratic management age? And here, an example to kind of exemplify this is McNow. And we can say that McDonald's uses big data analytics to generate real-time live banners that promote weather-worthy products. So if we go back here, can we escape this siege of the consumerist society? And this is a question that needs to be addressed as a trend and as its impact on responsible management education. Now, the third trend we identified is an increased problems in managing free time. As the pace of technology and of life in general kind of increases, more often than not, will feel more lonely and bored as we strive to fill our free time. Those who have children, maybe currently, can relate to that they have a problem of kind of boredom, and that they are always occupied with social media. And this is a trend that we see from now. How about in 30 years' time, which is by 2050, as most of the projections are kind of timed. So can management scholars research into areas of temporal effects on management, and how will organizations deal with employees' free time is a question that also needs to be addressed. Another trend is the use of science in suppressing human will. And we say that science is becoming very powerful, especially with the advent of hybrid wars, which is the blurring of war and peace. And so to what extent do we have free will with the advancement in science? For example, are we free to choose whether or not to take the COVID-19 vaccines? And will management science be at the detriment of the humane aspects of life is something that we need to address as responsible management educators and scholars. Also, the shift in world powers, as I showed at the beginning, according to the World Economic Forum, China and India are going to be more powerful as economies with their associated ideologies. So do we expect to see, for example, a possible weakening of capitalism in general, as the US might not be the world power in the future as projected in Futurism literature? Also, another trend is a weakening of family ties. Now, according to the literature also on Futurism, technology has led to a weakening of human relations in general, especially family as an institution. So will this trend affect family businesses? This is a question for management scholars. Also, the rise of a global multicultural world. And of course, question to ask, an imperative question is, how can we raise our children to accept diversity as a fact of future life, maybe current and future life? So how can organizations address and increase diversity in the workforce? And will multinational and diverse teams work virtually, and how will the organization chart change accordingly? According to Kantar research, those organizations that succeed are those that can move into uncomfortable places or growth in uncomfortable places. They have to embrace new lifestyles and demands. They have to have an open kind of thinking overall. Now, another trend is the rise in spirituality. After a certain extent of satisfying material needs, according to the literature, people will long for a different kind of satisfaction to find happiness, which is spirituality. And the search for purpose is identified as a future trend, according to several of the references that I've identified at the beginning. So will we find a rise in the management, spirituality, and religion discourse that is already, I think, a chapter at the Academy of Management, but do we expect to see this more research in this direction, for example, in responsible management, and how will responsible management education in parallel address that? Another trend is an increased transparency and the quantification of wealth indicators. Now, everything is measured against international standards. There's an increased transparency through technology, the internet, and globalization in general. So how will organizations deal with these trends, with this increased transparency? Corporations are becoming the new world power, and the role of the state is getting more and more limited as compared to the role of multinational corporations, as shown in the future literature. And these are those entities that transcend national borders and lead to economic liberalization. So how can we handle this if the private sector and the corporations are the new world powers? How can education, and especially management education, deal with that? Now, another trend is a subsequent rise in the importance of sustainability. And sustainability, I'm quoting Dixon 2019, one of the references I mentioned at the beginning, sustainability will be a dominant theme for 300 years, and we expect to see more than $50 trillion in green tech investments. Also, we will have an issue with water supplies, as I noted, also from several sources. This is cited as a key trend in the future, and we expect to see an enhanced role for the private sector in national development projects. In Egypt, where I come from, almost 60% of the GDP is held by the private sector. And we expect to see, of course, more and more literature on sustainability and CSR as related to education and development. According to the literature also, especially the Arabic reference I mentioned at the beginning, Galal Amin, the world in 2050, we expect to see westernization to Arab social life and a weakening of Arab nationalism, a shrinking global divide. So hopefully we don't get to see the picture I showed at the beginning. So a question to ask is, how will this affect responsible management literature in the Arab world and in the Arab context? Another trend is the increased global mobilization of human capital as people move from one country to the next looking for better opportunities and better quality of life. And the question is, how will this affect the social structure in different countries, whether developed or developing countries? Now, for example, we see in Europe, there is an issue about refugees and how they are integrated in European society. We can see this in different countries. So all of this global mobility will increase as a future trend, and we need to understand how we can, as responsible management scholars, address that in education. Another trend is the interdependence between world events. Now, of course, the recent financial crisis of 2008 had a global impact on several countries, investors, and companies. Now, the question is, are we approaching the age of global nationalism rather than nationalism for a particular country? And therefore, we project that management research will take more of a global perspective to world problems rather than a limited contextual view. Another trend is the illusion of progress due to continuous technological advancement. At the beginning, I put the picture of a chatbot, or a hypothetical picture of a chatbot. Do we expect that technological advancement will absolutely lead to what we can call human progress and development? And we have to ask the question of what are the drawbacks of technology now and in the future, like cyber attacks and cyber crimes. And this is projected, according to Business Insider and others, as a future trend, a negative one. So how will digitalization affect the workforce and the workplace? And do we expect at the extreme end to see robots and artificial intelligence actually replace human beings in what we would want to be done in a more humane way? Like driving, for example, a lot of research and a lot of expectations about the use of AI in driving, but how will this affect the rate of accidents is still subject to discussion. Another trend is the rise of civil society. And here we say that due to the rise in the power of corporations that I mentioned earlier and the private sector, we need to see a parallel rise in the third sector to balance kind of the forces of good in society and to cater to the needs of the poor, marginalized, and disadvantaged. And this is there's an expected rise in the discourse on social policy and on the intersection overall of business with society. Another trend is a rise in the importance of global organizations like the United Nations and like the initiative, the prime initiative that we are currently in. So due to globalization of world problems, we expect to see that there needs to continuously emerge global initiatives that cater to these problems and sort of solicit dialogue between different stakeholders and different parties that are beyond national borders. We expect to see also a rise in subsistence marketplaces or markets with the growing need for economic growth, also fueled by technological advancement. There will be a need for wider markets, including subsistence markets that are since long identified as huge in terms of size and need. Therefore, there is an expected increase in management literature on the bottom of the pyramids and subsistence marketplaces. Another trend is the rise of multinational planning. And here we expect, and according to different literature that we've read, that planning towards development will transcend national borders. And we expect to see a rise in fields like development economics and behavioral economics as related to responsible management scholarship. And these fields will experience internationalization more often than not. And this is something we expect to see in the future. Also, the rise in the power of media, of course, without emphasis, media, especially social media, is becoming more and more the source of information, the shaper of opinions, and the mobilizer of values. So how will social media shape management thought in the future? And as a result, as organizations, as I mentioned, embrace this open kind of thinking, will they operate based more on contingency theory? Where, for example, they respond to social demands by consumers. We talk about customer co-creation behaviors and all of these trends, brand communities that we currently see. This will be amplified more in the future. And also I have an image here of, for example, this is a caricature or like an image of the 2011 January Egyptian Revolution, and a kind of a reminder of the Arab Spring, where we had in several countries uprisings that represented civil society, and they were fueled mainly by social media. Now, the final trend I want to talk about before I hand over to Lisa and Marina is a rise in the moral economy. Of course, we know that economics is based on the concept, mainstream economics is based on the concept of scarcity. What if a new paradigm based on the abundance of resources were to prevail? Also, what if people started to feel that having more doesn't make them happier necessarily? What if management and economics were more entangled with morality? This will lead to also more emphasis and a more pronounced role for responsible management education. And in the next presentation, Lisa and Marina will actually continue with some of these pedagogies and innovative concepts in sustainability and responsible management that are on the ground and represent Grolar bears in responsible management education. Now, before I hand over to my colleagues, I want to ask final rhetorical questions. Question is, can sustainability objectives and the realization of the Sustainable Development Goals be aligned with the dominant social paradigm, or do we need a whole new paradigm, one that has sustainability at its core? And how can responsible management education address these mega trends that are likely to shape our world in the future, more likely than we imagine? And this is a question for the general audience. And of course, also, can we adopt Schumacher's phrase that small is beautiful? With these questions, I hand over to Lisa and Marina to give us some insights on Grolar bears in responsible management education.
Yeah, hello and a very warm welcome also from my side. Thank you very much, Noah, for this really interesting insights into different trends influencing our business world. And my colleague Marina and myself, we would like to now introduce to you some innovative teaching formats, so how we can, let's say, innovate responsible management education. But first of all, before we can answer this question, how responsible management education has to change, let's say, we would like to give you some insights into the different scenarios, how our future, our sustainable future could look like. And as you can see here, we have different scenarios based on two dimensions. The question is, who is ruling the game, let's say, the regulators or society, and the question of the intensity of change. So do we really want to go for breaking ground, let's say, or turning back the clock and sticking with the old times, let's say? And based on this, Roland Berger developed 4 different scenarios. And the first one is the planned new world, so where the regulators are taking over and we are really trying to develop a new sustainable world. But, and this is what is very important to understand from a business point of view, we also do not have that many companies left, because the very strict rules are somehow tracked digitally. We have a closed loop recycling cycle in place, and most of the companies have to leave the market, so there are only a few companies left. There is almost no competition left, so we have maybe a scenario which is not somehow supporting innovation for sustainability. And the second one is here based on, or let's say, the society is the one who is the driving force, let's say, and we are also trying to implement change into a more sustainable world. And here it's very interesting because we have a so-called circular economy plus understanding. The consumers, the customers, they are demanding for a CO2 neutral product, for example. And the real interesting question is, how can we realize transparent supply chains with liberal regulations and sustainability? And this is, from my point of view, the most important aspect, will lead to innovation and progress. So we are giving back to society. And the next two scenarios are the ones where we try to stick more or less with the past. And here we have the minimum viable master plan, where again the regulators are the ones who are making the rules, let's say, but it's more or less the world we are in right now. Yeah, so we have a lot of greenwashing. Companies are wasting their time on explaining why they are part of social or environmental scandals. So they are basically trying to find loopholes. Yeah? And this is, for example, what is happening right now with all the Supply Chains Act in Europe, for example. From our point of view, it's a lot more important that managers understand why they should be more sustainable and not what kind of activities they can, let's say, have in place in terms of circumventing the different regulations and trying to not pay the fines or not being punished and not being part of certain activities. And the final one, I hope we don't have to go for these scenarios. This is not our future, hopefully. This is the everyone for themselves. So this is the Western European countries in the 1950s, 60s. Yeah? So the climate change is unstoppable. We will have millions, billions of climate refugees. So price is again the most important aspect. So a product will be bought because it's the cheapest one. So efficiency is the overall paradigm management activities are going for. And I think that's very important to understand, to bring this into the context with what we have to, or what we just heard from Noah, dealing with the different trends, so that we have a basic idea of our potential future. And now is the really interesting question: what can we do in terms of shaping, actively shaping this future? And our, let's say, CBS way is, what we did is we developed the so-called Sdg Teaching Map. So I will not explain because we only have 20 minutes, so that's not that much. I will not explain how we did this. So we analyzed our curriculum. We have a so-called integrated curriculum. So we have a lot of lectures addressing, at least in some parts, sustainability. And we analyzed the curriculum, all the different lectures, and we tried to find out, okay, what kind of sub-targets of the SDGs we already address. So to find out what is the contribution, what can be the contribution of a business school in terms of achieving the sustainable development goals. And as you can see here, we have some targets like number 12, where we almost, or first of all, I have to explain that the sub-targets you can see here, these are the ones we cannot address by using our, let's say, old school teaching formats or teaching approaches. And there we have SDGs like number 12, where you can see that we have achieved almost all the sub-targets, and we have others like 11 or 15 or 16 or 17. So where we as a business school so far have not really a huge impact on achieving those kind of sub-targets. And this directly leads me to Marina's part, because this is now the question of the what can we do to bridge this gap, let's say, or these identified gaps. And therefore, it's really important that we come up with some new innovative teaching formats. And Marina will now explain some of those research activities we are involved to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lisa, for this introduction, and also thanks to Noah for elaborating here on the trends. And as Lisa already mentioned, so in the two projects that I will present to you now, so both of them are actually Erasmus Plus projects that we are doing with or engaging in with other European universities and other partner institutions. We have 2 so far that are trying to respond to the challenges that Noah has already elaborated on. And one of the projects I would dive in first is the issue project, and the other one, the effort project, that I will elaborate on next. Yeah, here is just a brief overview. I will not go into detail about all of the intellectual outputs that we will produce as part of our issue project. I will just elaborate on 2 because these are more or less the, let's say, teaching formats that are important here to understand for this session. But as you can see, so for example, for intellectual output 1, we have the integrated reporting manual, because we also believe that not only companies have to go for integrated reporting, but also universities. Then a methodology handbook with respective teaching cases for educators and so on. Then the 21-day challenge that I will also dive in a little bit more in detail in the following slides, and a future sustainable manager program, a green office strategy with toolkit and guidelines for universities, and another teaching format, the escape room. So yeah, for the following slides, I will just pick 2 of these intellectual outputs, the 21-day challenge and the escape room, and I will try to elaborate and connect it to what Noah and Lisa have previously mentioned. So if you want to check out further details, you're welcome to visit the website that you can see here on the slide, or check out our newsletter. First of all, the 21-day challenge. So what is it about? So the name has its offspring in the assumption or the common knowledge that, let's say, we only need presumably 21 days to change our respective habits. And this kind of logic that we used is or has then shaped the teaching format that La Ranta University of Technology, our partner here, has been developing this 21-day challenge upon. And as you can see, we have accumulated 17 thematic videos in an online learning tool. So we use here Moodle as a common platform. We have 4 supporting submodules for introduction, wrap-up, and evaluation. That is part here of the 21-day challenge. We have subtitles in various languages, but everything that was produced in terms of videos and so on has been produced and published in English. And it's also quite applicable to a diversity of stakeholders in the university community. The main themes that we are tackling in the 21-day challenge are consumer habits, food and nutrition, value and purpose, reduction of waste, mobility, energy consumption, responsible finance, and topics like digital activism. So yeah, how does it work, or what is the idea here? So the 21-day challenge runs for 21 days, consecutive days, as I just mentioned. And we will tackle throughout this challenge the 17 SDGs predominantly. And here on the slide, you can also see the partners with whom we have been elaborating and developing these teaching formats. And the purpose in terms of pedagogical approaches, why we have been going for the 21-day challenge, is to have a gamified online class in order to also generate understanding and awareness for various sustainability related topics. And all of these topics are then connected to the 17 SDGs. Now, as I just mentioned, it's a Moodle-powered educational module. It's easy to integrate in any type of course, so it's not a fully fledged course, but you can use it as part of your existing courses. It's suitable for students, teachers, university staff. And we try to build a habit of sustainable living, and we also try to inspire learners, or that they can inspire each other during the challenge, because they can also engage and discuss certain challenges among themselves. And obviously, as it's a gamified option or teaching module, it's also easy and fun to do this. So how does it work? So first of all, we kick off the 21-day challenge with an entry quiz at the beginning to set a kind of benchmark and evaluate sustainability awareness among the people who are engaging in the challenge. And then we we engage in a repetitive cycle for 21 days to form this habit. So first of all, you always watch for the 17 SDGs in introductory video. Then you choose among the different types of challenges. Then you try to accomplish the challenge, post pictures of how you did it, write texts, do research whatsoever, and post your results then on Moodle. And then you get points for accomplishing this challenge. And at the end, we also then need you to do a quiz to get a certificate here of this 21-day challenge. Yeah, the material that we have been using is a teaching material and cases from all over Europe. And of course, this gamified option makes it also kind of a challenge because the person with the highest number of points wins. So different types of challenges also have different levels of, let's say, difficulty, and you get also more points the more difficult the challenge is that you engage in. The second aspect that I wanted to present is the sustainability escape room. So no, it's not about escaping from sustainability, but it's more about how sustainability can be integrated in our daily lives. Once again, also very much focusing on accomplishing the SDGs and reflecting on the SDGs. So as you can see here, this was the construction stage, early stage of the escape room. So as you can see, a physical escape room that because of the pandemic, we were not able to pilot yet in person, but also the Budapest Business School, who has been developing this escape room together with partners, has been also going for an online version that will also be available during the summer. And again, the goal is to also create awareness for sustainability. It's again also applicable for all stakeholders of higher education institutions. Again, also a very much gamified concept. At, let's say, the time of the game, only 4 to 5 players can enter the escape room together. And the main themes that they will tackle are surrounding topics such as resources, energy consumption, waste management, consumerism, inequality, cooperation, and teamwork. And the game outcome that we wanted to foster is that the spaceship that we built, so it will also look like a spaceship from the inside, and the spaceship is called Plan B. And the outcome should be this is only an illusion and there is no plan B because there is no planet B for us. So we also do not want to create kind of an outcome that says, oh yeah, we can just escape our planet Earth and just, let's say, have a fun life somewhere else in the universe, right? And so the spaceship is called Plan B. And again, it's an imaginary time travel and leads the players into a possible dystopian future. And this is kind of the rough layout of the escape room. So we have different compartments here of the escape room. And once again, a great team building experience, as I believe, suitable for students, teachers, university staff, but even you could invite company delegates. It's easy, again, to integrate as part of any course. And these are 2 pictures from the actual escape room nowadays. So here you can see this like cockpit. So once you enter, there will be an official artificial intelligence greeting you and welcoming you to the game. And as you can maybe see here from the control panel, there are like different cards laid out as part of the SDGs. Inviting students to engage in different challenges, to open or to solve specific riddles and open specific boxes and so on. So we believe that's quite an entertaining way to familiarize students with the SDGs. Again, I mentioned it already, 4 to 5 players. The duration is very similar to the regular escape rooms that you already know. So 1 to 1.5 hours. It's again a linear game through all of the SDGs. We are very much looking forward to pilot this very soon. The second project that I wanted to introduce to you is the Effectiveness of Responsibility teaching project. Again, the second Erasmus Plus project called Effort. And what we are trying to develop here are, amongst others, a statistical tool that evaluates the effectiveness of different teaching forms and formats and how we can foster with these different types of formats the sustainability, understanding, and maybe even behavioral change in students. So we have also different types of controlling tools that we develop, then a handbook with different educational or pedagogical tools that will be also provided to educators, open access, a self-evaluation tool, but also once again 3 innovative teaching methods, teaching courses. And yeah, one of the teaching courses I will also introduce to you in a minute. And here, once again, the link to the newsletter and the link to the webpage. So what is the teaching format about that I wanted to introduce to you today? It's a future scenario analysis course. And once again, we can do this again with different stakeholders and experts. So we have also the possibility to gain practical insights during this course. We have 4 different workshop phases. It's more of an explorative learning phase through a variety of different pedagogical approaches that I will present to you in a nutshell in a couple of minutes. And as students are developing a future scenario analysis or a future scenario themselves, we can of course not say to students, oh, this is not the right scenario that you developed. And so we were thinking about how can we assess students' performance in this course. And so we came up with the idea of evaluating the progress that students made during the course in a form of a reflective journaling technique. So this is the overview here with the or during the different weeks. As I just mentioned, we have 4 phases according to the so-called future workshop methodology or Zukunftswerkstätten. So this is more of a German concept here with 4 different phases: preparation phase, critique phase, fantasy phase, and implementation phase. So we are currently still developing this or improving this with the help of experts, especially experts that have been applying the future workshop methodology in different course formats or have been trained in this methodology, but we also invite feedback from other educators, especially those who have been developing teaching formats in the context of responsible management education. And what we try to do with or try to accomplish with this teaching format is to foster creativity, to encourage critical thinking, and again to invite students to think about a future worth living in a gamified approach. So what we do, for example, in specific weeks. So first of all, we have here a preparation phase where we engage, like Noah said at the beginning, with different challenges that are awaiting us or that we are currently already exposed to. Then we have a little bit of an introduction phase where students are then selecting their teams. Then we are working on mapping exercises of different systems and systematic approaches. What we also try to do is do a brainwriting and painting exercises. Then we are playing, for example, the Future Game 2050 with the students, again, also more of a gamified approach, but also later on invite students to actually build their scenario in a Lego series play approach. Then also we invite students to present their utopia that they are building. And during each phase and stage, we also provide them with more input and more food for thought, building on which they can then improve their scenario. And for each week, we invite them then to reflect on what they have learned in class and how this has been shaping their scenario that they will present at the end of this specific course. Having said that, I would like to invite Lisa once again to conclude and lay out the questions for us in a more reflective way.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marina. The overall conclusion is that we hopefully have been capable of taking you with us on this journey for the educational overhaul, like we call it here. So that we can, or that we hopefully have shown you some ways how to develop from this outdated old paradigm to the innovative looking forward teaching approach, with system thinking, a teacher as a facilitator, active students. So I'm pretty sure that the 3 approaches Marina just discussed with you are definitely activating students, and also giving, or those kind of approaches will give or will describe a completely different role for the teachers. As you can see here on the right side in orange, the different approaches and methods. And coming back to the headline of our speech today is maybe in the future we will all become some kind of educational hybrids, because we have to, or we will collaborate, we will work together with stakeholders, institutions we have never thought of before, because we have to find new ways to somehow achieve those key competences for sustainable development in management education. So this is the overall target of today's speech, and we are really looking forward to the discussion. So here are some key takeaways, but I think we focused on the most important aspect. First of all, addressing the SDGs. So we have a common guideline. So what is the overall, or what are the overall targets for sustainability? Doesn't matter in which cultural background, for example, our business school or our university is operating. And then we really try to come up with, let's say, some gamification approaches, so this to make students active, motivated to develop their own ideas, so innovation and reflective learning and critical thinking. I think this is one of the most important competencies for our future, that we really find a new way, not what we did so far, trying to be less unsustainable. We really need innovative new approaches, and therefore you need this kind of reflective learning and critical thinking approach. And finally, we are really looking forward to the discussion right now.